Hello and welcome. It's been called the eighth continent, but what exactly is it? The giant Pacific garbage patch is described as a massive swirl of waste that is estimated to be twice the size of a country like Somalia or France. It's killing sea life and birds alike. And now the toxic plastic vortex might just be making its way into the human food chain. The ocean streams that stretch from America to Japan creates a spiral known as a gyre. Trapped in the middle of the northern Pacific Ocean is the world's aquatic garbage dump, containing everything from plastic bags to soda bottles floating just under the water's surface. Some is thrown into the ocean by ships, but the vast majority is believed to come from land. It's been building up for decades, but in the past few years it's been expanding at alarming rates. Well, the sun can break down plastic into smaller particles, but when fish eat this toxic soup, the problem ends up entering the human food chain. But since the vortex is in international waters, no government is taking responsibility for it. So on the 40th anniversary of Earth Day, we ask, how dangerous is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and what can be done about it? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email, and we also welcome your phone calls onto the show. Well, I'm joined now by the man who discovered the plastic vortex 13 years ago by chance. Captain Charles Moore sold his business interest to become a full-time environmental activist and founded the Algalita Marine Research Foundation based in Long Beach, California. He's joining us today from Los Angeles. Now, Captain, before we begin our discussion with you, I do have someone on the line from the Pacific Ocean. He's British adventurer and environmentalist David de Rothschild, who's sailing from California to Australia on a catamaran made entirely from recycled plastic to raise awareness of the issue. And it's quite fitting the boat is called the Plastiki. David, great to have you with us. Let me just start off by asking the progress you're making on the journey. How is the Plastiki holding up?
The Plastiki is doing incredibly well. We're about 4 days away from the Line Islands. We've done 3,200 odd nautical miles, and it's been a very exciting trip so far. Some big seas when we left San Francisco, but we're now sailing, towards the Line Islands, which will be our first port of call. It's good that we've done a big tick towards the expedition and towards the fact that we can reuse waste as a resource.
Now, I know you're trying very much to highlight also the issue of the amount of waste and very toxic waste being dumped into the oceans. But realistically, this journey, what do you really expect it to achieve? I know you've actually made sure it's got a very low carbon footprint for an 11,000 nautical mile journey. But what do you expect to come out of this trip?
I think it's a twofold approach. The first is obviously we need to continue raising awareness to the public around the issues of dumb, single-use plastics, throwaway plastics, plastics that we're seeing in our ocean, the styrofoam cups, the plastic bottles, the lids, the plastic bags. So that we need to continue heightening the awareness. So using the Plastiki as a way to do that. And then on the other side of it, it's about innovation. It's showcasing that waste is fundamentally a design flaw. And that's what we're doing with the material that we've used in the boat. It's a new form of material that's actually based on plastic bottles. It's called Ceratex. It's a self-reinforcing textile. Basically, the superstructure of the vessel is actually material that we are using is the same material as plastic bottles. So we can actually showcase the fact that waste is really is needless, and that it's a valuable resource, and that we can have an outlet for these bottles rather than them ending up in landfill.
Now, I know you're not heading directly towards or anywhere near the giant plastic garbage patch that we've been discussing on this show. We're about to go into details with Captain Moore on. But let me ask you what signs you've seen on the journey so far of environmental damage being done to the ocean.
We're seeing a huge amount of sporadic patches of plastic. I mean, Charles will talk more about it from the patch point of view. We're going south towards the southern convergence zone, and what we're seeing is a massive, I say massive, but areas of high quity, I mean,
presumably a lot of it is, I know, invisible. Yeah, a lot is invisible to the eye. But
yeah, it's subsurface. 61% of it is less than a millimeter in diameter. So it's very hard to see, and it gets ingested back into the food system through the life layer. And we do see everyday items that are.
All right, David, I think we're having trouble with the satellite phone. I thank you very much and wish you a lot of luck on your journey on the Plastiki. Thanks. And maybe we'll get an update at some stage with you on what's going on there on your journey too. Thank you. Captain Charles Moore, I'd like to bring you in here, sir, and glad you could join us there from Los Angeles. Let me ask you about, when you first came across this giant plastic garbage patch, you actually, there were some pretty strong descriptions you gave of it. Tell me what you saw.
Well, frankly, those images we have of islands or sheets of plastic waste as if they were the street after a parade with objects stacked one against the other are not the way to imagine what we're seeing out in the ocean. What we're seeing out in the ocean is a dispersal mechanism for our waste. So the ocean is enormous. It's 2/3 of the surface area of the Earth. And it's got a lot of room to put our waste in. Unfortunately, it's very good at mixing it up and homogenizing it. So what you see is a piece here and a piece there. It's just that it doesn't go away. You keep seeing another piece and then another piece and then another piece. And after a week of this, of not being able to come on deck without seeing some form of human-made plastic garbage, you get the idea that the ocean has become this plastic soup, and that's what we attempted to study and quantify with our research.
Explain to me, Captain, why it gathers in this particular area where this gyre occurs, this kind of vortex. Why is it tends to accumulate in such a big area, collective area?
Well, it has to do with the heating of air at the equator and the cooling of air at the poles. In between, in what we call the mid-latitudes, there's a mountain of air, and that mountain of air descends in a clockwise rotation, and the force of the atmosphere turning also turns the water beneath it, so that we have a kind of toilet bowl effect. We have air pushing down on the central gyre, creating a kind of a lower sea level. Then we have material rotating in from the coasts of the Pacific Rim to this central area, and that's why I've called it a toilet bowl effect. It's pulling stuff from the edges and bringing it into the center, and it's caused by the weight of the atmosphere in the mid-latitudes.
Let me ask you this: the descriptions we're hearing, and we've also been, explaining, country. It's the size of twice the size of Somalia or France. I mean, there's quite a disturbing depiction of the size of this waste, this patch. How substantively and how accurately has it been measured?
Frankly, it remains to be measured in much more detail. As I say, the Pacific Ocean alone is 1/3 of the planet's surface. And the North Pacific tropical, subtropical gyre is a large part of that, perhaps the size of the continent of Africa. Now, that's 10 million square miles, and we've researched it 2/3 of the way to Japan. So we've been way outside the actual so-called garbage patch, and we've still found a plastic soup. The trawls that we bring in these particles, the same situation that David de Rothschild described. Although he's well outside of this so-called garbage patch, he's still seeing significant amounts of plastic debris. So it's really a matter of degree. It's like in the central gyre, we're talking in this garbage patch 1 million pieces or more per square kilometer. As you get out from it, you may be in the hundreds of thousands or in the tens of thousands of pieces per square kilometer. But if you're thinking 10,000 pieces of plastic per square kilometer in an area the size of the continent of Africa, no matter where you are, at least that much, you're talking about a significant environmental threat.
Well, sir, let me put an email we got from a viewer in Zimbabwe. Muram Binda wrote in saying, what has been done in all these years to try to deal with the plastic vortex? Now, I know you discovered this patch about 13 years ago, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA, predicted it actually about 22 years ago in a paper published in 1988. Why has it been sort of out of the public picture when it's so potentially devastating?
I think it's because of the futility of any cleanup effort or any measure to actually attack it in situ. It's going to have to be prevented from entering the ocean in the first place. It's just not realistic to imagine sieving it out. We just don't have that kind of a technology that can sieve 1/3 of our planet's surface, which has an average depth of 2 miles. So we've got to deal with shutting it off at the source, and that would require retooling an economy which has a lot of momentum. And I think that's the reason that governments can't tackle it, is that it just would require too much retooling of the economy.
Well, now we had another viewer write in, Rizwan Khan wrote in saying, why haven't any of the NGOs tried anything? Now, I know you actually gave up your business interests and dedicated yourself to this full time, but why has there not been more, certainly activity in publicizing what's going on?
We're starting, and this particular interview is an indication that the interest is growing. And so I'm very gratified to be here with you today to detail some of this phenomenon. But truly, NGOs are concerned about it. It's beginning to break into the public consciousness. I guess the term we would use today is it's going viral. People are realizing that the ocean has become this plastic wasteland and that we have to do something about it. The groups that are mobilizing vessels, such as Project Kaisei, that want to go out this summer and get 100 tons of this material out of the gyre, they'll probably be successful. They'll probably get many, many tons of this stuff out. But during that time frame, when they've accumulated this stuff onto a barge out in the middle of the garbage patch, more material will have entered the ocean than they have removed. We're fighting a losing battle. The switch has got to be shut off before we can make progress.
I'll ask you more about the content of what's there and where it's coming from as well in just a moment, sir. We're going to take a very short break here, but more of our discussion when we return. Welcome back. It's the 40th anniversary of Earth Day, and we're discussing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, what dangers it poses and what can be done about it. With me is Captain Charles Moore, the founder of the Algalita Marine Research Foundation, who stumbled upon the plastic vortex 13 years ago and has been calling attention to it ever since. Captain Moore, one thing, when we talked with David de Rothschild, who's out on the Plastiki going across the Pacific trying to highlight this, he said that, a lot of it is not visible. Describe to me, and I think you have some samples to show our viewers too, but the kind of stuff that is out there.
It's broken down bits of consumer objects. This represents a 1-mile zooplankton trawl using a net with a meter-wide mouth and 1/3 of a millimeter mesh. And if I swirl this material up and show it to you, I believe the camera will see pieces of plastic swirling around. This is a concentrated sample of the plastic soup our ocean has become. It's lots of fragments from 1/3 of a millimeter on up, and most of them are unidentifiable as to their origin. Now, when we have these impacting the beaches of the Pacific, we get a new kind of sand. This is Pacific Island beach sand from Hawaii. It's a square foot only, 1 square foot of beach sand, almost entirely plastic, scraped from the surface of the beach, floating up there from this soup, this gyre. So the Hawaiian archipelago lies in the North Pacific subtropical gyre, and these particles impact their beaches. They're an invasion of sorts. It's not their garbage that's impacting the beach, it's the garbage coming out of all the rivers and all the ships in the ocean.
Now that's an interesting point, because I read that it could be that up to 70% of the garbage that's there in the vortex and in the ocean is coming from, certainly even this far out in the ocean, is coming from the land, and only, 80%, and about 20% from ships.
Yeah, you can think of it as 3/4 land-based and 1/4 ship-based. And when we think about it being land-based, we just have to look at the mouths of our urban rivers. It doesn't matter if it's an urban river in Lagos, Nigeria, or Manila, Philippines, or Los Angeles, California. Every single urban center in the world that has a coastal presence is discharging by the ton. We studied here the 2 main rivers discharging into San Pedro Bay and Los Angeles and found in 3 days 30 tons, 2.3 billion individual plastic items washing off the streets, down into the rivers, out to the ocean in just 3 days. So you think 30 tons in 3 days, what's happening worldwide? We're not the only one. I have pictures from around the world. People send me these pictures and I get them. It's every urban center has goods packaged in plastic that are not recycled and end up in the waste stream.
Now, Captain, I know that there is, the recycling aspect of it is still, it's very young, that people don't really recycle the way they should. But a lot of the materials that are being made now, and from what I understood, a lot of the materials, the plastics, are supposed to be biodegradable. Doesn't any of this stuff that gets into the ocean completely dissolve or completely neutralize?
There's a very, very small percentage that is made of biodegradable plastics. And the principal bioplastic that's out there today, the polylactic acid, is not marine degradable. It will last in the ocean about the same length of time as the traditional plastic polymers from petroleum-based sources. So we've got a long way to go before we proliferate the market with marine degradable plastics. That would be part of the solution, but we really have to look at this whole throwaway culture. And we don't want throwaway plastics in the ocean. These compostable plastics need to be composted on land, not degraded in the ocean.
A couple of emails for you, sir, that came in on us from a lot of emails we had on this particular subject, on the impact. Here are two of them back to back. The first one's from Ali Nasser Abdurrahman, who wrote in saying, do we know the effects of these long-lasting plastics on marine animals, seawater and humans, and do we know what the source of this garbage is? Now, we touched on that a bit, but the second one came in from Italy, from Luciana de Floriano, who wrote in saying, if the substances enter into the food chain, hence becoming nourishment for the fish, what can the repercussion be on man's health? Now, I gather much of this pollution does get into the lowest end of the food chain and works its way right through, right up to the human level, I guess.
Well, and the great cetaceans now. We've just had a gray whale wash up on a beach in the Seattle area with sweatpants, towels, surgical gloves, and plastic particles in its stomach. So it's every trophic level, every feeding level in the ocean, from the tiniest zooplankton all the way up to the great whales, are consuming this plastic waste. And your email questioner said that we were giving these nutrients to the creatures, but as a matter of fact, they're non-nutritive, non-digestible particles. These plastics carry no nutritional value. Maybe a tiny bit of biofouling organisms that are living on the plastic, but the plastic itself has no nutritional value. So we're putting the ocean on a plastic diet. Everything from the great whales to the tiny zooplankton is being robbed of nutrition by wasting its energy eating food that gives it no nutritional value. In addition, these plastics absorb toxins and desorb them into the marine life that consume them. So in addition to being non-digestible and non-nutritive, they're poisoning the marine food web. And the fish that we eat, for instance, the dolphin fish known in Hawaii as the mahi-mahi, a pelagic fish that's able to be caught worldwide. It doesn't school, so it can't be fished out in the way that we fish out other species by netting them. These mahi-mahi that are on tables in restaurants around the world are consuming plastic. We found plastic in the stomachs of these fish that we sampled from the deep ocean.
Well, let me get another email to you, sir. This came in from Fatima Goga, who wrote in saying, who is in charge with dealing with this issue since it is in international waters? And I'm wondering how much that location in the middle of the Pacific for the gyre actually complicates, well, I mean, allows countries to basically say that they're not responsible.
Yeah, countries claim an economic interest out 200 miles from their shores. The exclusive economic zone out 200 miles from the shore doesn't begin to touch these oceanic gyres. They're outside the exclusive economic zone of any country, so no country owns the problem. The International Maritime Organization is the UN organization charged with administering ocean issues, and it has adopted MARPOL Annex 5, which prohibits the dumping of plastic anywhere in the ocean. However, there's nothing there about cleaning it up or stopping it from land-based sources. They can't really coordinate the land-based issue with the ocean-based issue. They've just prohibited 20% of the problem by prohibiting dumping from ships. But of course, not everyone has signed MARPOL, and there's no enforcement. There's been very few prosecutions for ocean dumping under the MARPOL Annex 5 agreement. So we really haven't fully dealt with the problem of 20% of it coming from ships, and that organization is powerless to deal with land-based sources. So we really have a quagmire of inability to coordinate response to this problem, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. I recently attended an IMO meeting, and the basic thrust was to postpone things to the next meeting.
So what do you propose be done, Captain? What is the most direct action that can be taken now? Before we were chatting and before the interview, you said that this sort of plastic, this garbage footprint in the ocean is potentially more dangerous than the carbon footprint that we're emitting.
Yeah, I think when we talk about humanity's plastic footprint, right now we're talking about greater effects on the natural world than our carbon footprint. These plastics, through entanglement and now ingestion with the death of these whales and dolphins that have consumed plastic, is killing hundreds of thousands of marine mammals every year. It's killing millions of seabirds. Over 70 species of seabirds are eating these plastics, some to the point at which it's becoming the main diet of these birds and killing them. So the fish we can't monitor. We can't monitor. We monitor surface feeding fish that are consuming plastic. We found 671 pieces in 1,371 fish. But that food, what it's doing to them, you don't find sick fish in the ocean. Sick fish are eaten by healthy fish. The ocean is very depauperate in a sense. There's not a lot of extra food in the ocean. So anything edible is going to be consumed quickly. So we're not able to run around finding sick fish in the middle of the ocean. But it's very clear from our research that it's having a tremendous effect on the marine food web, including the fish that we eat.
All right. Well, Captain Moore, I thank you so much for highlighting this issue. Thank you for joining us there, and good luck with your work as well.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, and happy Earth Day, everyone. Take care of her. She's the only one we've got.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for being with us. Now, remember, you can follow our show on Facebook, where we keep you posted on upcoming topics and give you a chance to submit your questions and comments. You can also catch up with shows you may have missed and interact with other viewers. Well, on the next show, we look at Pakistan's powerful secret service, the Inter-Services Intelligence. Critics say it has destabilized Pakistan and sabotaged ties between New Delhi and Islamabad. But its supporters argue that the ISI's policies are all about protecting Pakistan's interests in a hostile region. That's it for now from me and the team. We'll see you next time.